love the idea that your brain kind of subconsciously picks up on these things. Because when I've tried making short films in the past, there'd be ideas I have where I think it's cool, but then I'm like, but who's like actually going to notice this, you know? But when you think of it from this perspective, it's kind of like, it doesn't necessarily matter if they consciously notice it, as long as they kind of get the feeling from it that you're trying to get.
Yeah, it's about the feeling. It's also about the audience, regardless of whether or not they know what the backstory is, what the thing is, they can tell the difference between when there is one and when there isn't one. Because how the writer and the director makes a film and makes a project, the more they know about the project, the more complete and cohesive it will just be and feel. That was a big thing I was dealing with when I was making my first big sci-fi kind of short film. It was a thing called Dissolvers, and it's an 8-minute film that's set in the distant future in this kind of Blade Runner-esque totalitarian government world, and in the first minute they're throwing around like terms like you're sentenced by the UEA, and just tossing around stuff that, like, to me, I know exactly what all this stuff is, but I just accept. The audience never will. They'll never know what any of this means, but they're watching a world that is developed, and they're saying, I don't know what that means, but all those actors do. So really what it is it creates this authenticity and this feeling in the world where you're like, oh, this is a lived-in world. We're just suddenly like being thrown into it. And that, I think, is it's such a hard thing to do, but it's so important in creating a good world building versus bad world building, because I've seen so much crap. I'm not going to name any names, but so much stuff where they spend the first 20 minutes of something just hammering you over the head with like, this is what this is, this is what this is, because they're so terrified that the audience won't be able to fill in the blanks. And you have to treat your audience like they're smart.
It kind of seems like doing that makes it so when the audience does hear these things, it doesn't seem like the thing was just made for the movie, but rather it just already existed and the movie had it included.
Yeah, the movie isn't about this. It's just set in this world. Yeah. So that's exactly right. And obviously, if it's important, you got to somehow figure out how to explain it, but it doesn't have to happen immediately either. I think one thing that's great about the opening to Star Wars is... and I'm talking about the original, like episode 4, is the opening sequence is just this giant space battle, right? And they just launch you in. They don't tell you who these people are. They don't tell you, oh, this is the rebellion, and the big ship is the Empire, and they're the bad guys. You just see all these people running around. They're clearly afraid, and then the door gets blasted off and they're all shooting lasers, and your brain's just like, okay, they have laser guns. Cool. There's robots walking around talking. So one of them talks. The other just goes, and your brain is like, okay, there are robots, and some of them speak English and some of them don't. And your brain is figuring it out, because when you see a clearly defined world, it challenges the audience, which is so nice. And being like, when you can tell that the director is treating you like you're smart and that you can figure it out, then you want to give them the benefit of the doubt. You want to be like, yeah, I am smart. Hold on, what's going on here? And you sit forward in your seat and you're trying to figure out, okay, so the guys in the white armor, they seem to be mean looking. They're shooting down at these afraid people. I'm guessing they're the bad guy. And then you get the big black, Darth Vader costume coming through the door. You don't know who he is, but you're like, he looks scary. He's probably the bad guy in charge. And so once again, you don't need to introduce these characters with words. Show don't tell is a huge lesson in writing.
Yeah, I remember I actually sent you a script like my first semester of college. Yeah. And I had a lot of inner dialogue that he would speak to kind of get his emotions across. And you suggested like getting rid of the inner dialogue and finding ways to just show it. Yeah. And I thought, I don't know, it's cool because it challenged me, but I felt like overall it made it a lot better afterwards.
Narration sucks. I hate narration. It can be useful. There are times in which the character speaking directly to themselves or the audience works. I think in Deadpool it works really well, but that's because the story is being told in a certain way, and with this fourth wall breaking kind of thing, it works. If you just have a character giving narration because you don't know how else to show that, I implore you to just try to figure it out, because there's a way. And if it doesn't happen immediately, that's okay. You can have something where, like, it would be really great if the audience knew this on page 1, in minute 1. But if it can't happen until minute 10, does your film end? Is it a, destroyed scrap pile? Can it not? Is it unwatchable? Probably not. They can probably go 10 pages without knowing that bit of information if you have no way to explain it in visuals. Yeah. So take your time. It's not a race. As long as you give the audience what they need to know, then the rest will come later.